Hey guys, this is Riddhi Datta and welcome back to yet another video on my channel. So as promised in my last couple of videos, I am here with my complete Java backend development roadmap. So this is the learning path that I followed while I wanted to learn Java backend development, Spring and all those things, which I'm going to eventually cover in this video. And I'm going to share exactly that path that I followed to learn. Obviously different people will have different opinions, but this path, exact path, helped me a lot in grasping the concepts that eventually helped me a lot while I was contributing to projects in various companies that worked on Java, right? Just to give you some motivation that why you should learn Java backend development and Java in the first place in 2023, let me tell you that I have worked for around 4 companies, both service and product based companies, including the likes of Amazon, RCZM, etc. I've seen Java in action in all of these companies in the backend. So Java forms an integral part of all these top tech product as well as service based companies. So if you are someone who is planning to join a top tech company, the chances are really higher that you may come across Java development. So if you follow the exact path and the order in which I'm going to suggest you in this video, trust me, after 5 to 6 months you will be a complete master in Java backend development, provided you really understand the concepts that I'm going to tell you in the video thoroughly and you read about them and you provide the hard work. So without wasting any further time, let's get started with the video. So the first part of this video is all about learning the Java language in general, right, before jumping into the backend development side of things. So for this, if you want to know that what are the things you need to learn in Java, like the code Java part, the basic OOPS concepts, the inheritance, then comes your advanced Java like multi-threading, then comes your collections, all these things. I've made an extensive video on this, a roadmap video on Java development. I will attach the link to the video in description. So after you have watched this video, please go and check out that video and start your preparation with that video first, because if you don't know Java or those topics that I have talked about in that video, then I won't suggest you or I won't recommend you to continue learning with the topics of this video. Having said that, if you are someone who know the basics of Java and knows the things that I've already covered in my last video, then feel free to start backend development using Java. Since you're learning backend development, you should know the basics of networking, right? The basics of HTTP, TCP, TCP versus UDP, the client server model, right? And also you should have a fair idea about what caching is and why is it used, where exactly is it used, what are the scenarios. You just read about it, you don't need to know too much in depth. You should know a little bit about databases, and one of the databases like MySQL and Oracle. MySQL is probably more into use, so I would recommend you to pick a database that you would anyway have in your coursework. Okay, so the next come is one very important topic, that is the build tools. So there are a couple of build tools like Maven, Gradle, but Maven probably is the most popular, so I would just suggest to spend some time. It would hardly take half a day to learn what build tools are, what is this functionality, because they are being widely used everywhere, right? Without it the industry probably doesn't work. And then probably read through Maven or Gradle, whatever suits you, but I would suggest you to learn Maven. Then I would recommend you to read about Tomcat and install Tomcat in your machine, and also install MySQL, and also install Postman and read what basically it is, right? Because these are the things that will really set you up for the topics that I would be covering next. Also, for the backend development part, it is very important that you should have an ID, a Java ID. It can be IntelliJ, it can be Eclipse, but I am assuming that you already have it set up. Okay, so next comes learning two fundamental things of Java backend development. Now your actual Java backend development journey starts. There are two things which you need to learn as JSP and servlets. Many people would probably come and tell you, hey, why are you learning this? This is obsolete. This is not used in the industry. But trust me, start with this JSP servlets. Your concepts would be so clear. Because see, if you jump directly to a framework like Spring Boot, you won't be understanding or appreciating the things that are happening behind the scenes, that are happening underneath, right? So you need to start from the very basics, try to understand what are the problems that people used to face while they used to code back during those days, and how it is being resolved, right? And why and how is this frameworks coming into the picture, and why is it so beneficial. So you would be able to appreciate as well as feel those things and those aspects, and that is, I think, a very important for a programmer or any programmer in any field or any tech stack, right? So that is why I would highly recommend you to start with the basics if you have time, and don't skip any part that I would be mentioning in the video. So I personally feel you should start with JSP servlets and spend some time on it and get your hands dirty with it. Basically JSP is the front end part, right, and the servlet is, you can call it a back end part, right? So probably nowadays I do understand that you have React and Angular and all those front end frameworks, and JSP is not even used. There is also a framework called Timeleaf, which is also again a part of the front end, but I'm not covering that. I'm just asking you to learn JSP a little bit so that you understand how front end pages used to be designed back during those days with servlets. So the full form of JSP is Jakarta Server Pages. It's a collection of technologies that help software developers create dynamically generated web pages based on HTML, XML, SOAP or other document types, whereas a servlet is a Java programming language class that is used to extend the capabilities of servers that host applications accessed by means of a request response programming model, right? Also read a little bit about the MVC architecture, the model view controller, what a model is, what a view is, what is controller, so that you can appreciate the topics that you are going to cover next in this video. Also read a little bit about JDBC API. So JDBC stands for Java Database Connectivity. So JDBC is a Java API to connect and execute the query with the database. So now would understand how with the help of Java code you can execute SQL queries on the database, right? Now once you are done with these things, you are done with JSP, you are done with servlet, you understand MVC, you are done with build tools, you are also done with JDBC, right? So now you can also connect to the database via the Java code. Now is a good time to get started with Spring, right? So Spring basically is a framework, right, that came into existence because developers back in those days got frustrated with the complexities of Java EE, and Spring as a result rose in popularity. So Spring is basically, as I said, is a framework, while Java is kind of a standard, a programming standard. But anyway, if you want, you can read more about it. So we will start with the Spring core first. So here you would learn two very important things, and these two often get asked in a lot of interviews. One is dependence injection and second is the inversion of control, right? These are very important things. Then you would learn about the beans, the concept of beans, the bean scopes. You would also understand how can you configure like Spring using XML. Then you would learn about annotations, and then finally that is using Java code that is without any XML. So don't skip any of these. Maybe you might not be using XML, right, but still learn about it so that you can appreciate that fact that how the other part is better than the others or when should you use what. Next comes Spring MVC, right? So learn about the request patterns and request mappings, what are path variables, all these things. And once you are done with Spring MVC, move on to Spring REST, and here is a good time to read about the REST API and what it does if you are not very aware of REST, right? So now in the Spring REST, you have to cover a couple of things. That first is the JSON data binding. So read about JSON as well if you are not sure what JSON is. Then you learn to create a Spring REST controller, retrieving POJOs as JSON. POJOs are nothing, just plain old Java objects, right? Using path variables for REST endpoints, and learn a little bit about exception handling and REST. So if you are not aware of what exception handling is, you might be having a hard time to understand a couple of concepts. So that is why I would highly recommend you yet again that do watch my first video on the Java developer roadmap. That basically covers the core Java and a couple of other things, so that you have a very smooth experience while getting started with this Java backend development roadmap. So once you're done with Spring REST, we come to a very important topic, that is Hibernate. You read about the ORM, the model, the object relationship model, and why it is a marvel in this engineering industry, right? Read about the configurations of Hibernate, read about the CRUD operations, right? One very important question that is often asked in interviews is eager versus lazy loading, so please do read about it. Also learn about the Hibernate mappings, right? Spend some time, because this Hibernate is not an easy topic to grasp straight away, so spend some time on it, especially understanding the mappings part. So in a nutshell, basically you can consider Hibernate as a better version of JDBC. And then once you're done with Hibernate, once you feel you're confident with Hibernate, comes an even better version, that is the Spring Data JPA, right? Basically learn about the Spring Data JPA and Spring Data REST, but please don't skip Hibernate, right? Don't directly jump to Spring Data JPA, right? Otherwise you won't be able to grasp a lot of things underneath. So in the Spring Data REST, learn about the configuration, pagination and sorting. These are the three important concepts. Once you're done with this, here comes Spring AOP. So AOP is aspect oriented programming. So first read about it, and then in the Spring part learn about the before advice type annotations, point cut expressions, point cut declarations, ordering aspects, join points, advice types. I think this should be enough under Spring AOP. So basically I would give you a suggestion over here. Obviously you would keep on learning these things via some tutorial videos or something, right? But I would also suggest you to work on a project parallelly. So what I did, I would tell you. So I started with building a train reservation system. Let's say that was the project I started to build, right? So I initially started building that project using JSP and servlets, right? Then I introduced, and also I used JDBC for that. Then I introduced Spring Core to that project. Then I used Spring MVC instead of the JSP servlets. Then I used Spring REST. Then I introduced Hibernate instead of the JDBC. Then I introduced Spring Data JPA to improvise the Hibernate. So see, this is the way I improved the same existing code base or the same existing project to further modify the code. So the functionality was the same, but I could see how my code was getting better and better by using these frameworks. So I would suggest this way worked really well for me. Just pick one project, work on it, right, and try to improve on that project, and that would give you a very good realization that why frameworks are so powerful. So okay, so coming back after done with Spring AOP, learn Spring security. Again, if you're working in any organization, this is going to be a very important topic. First, read about authentication and authorization. Again, this is a very important question asked in interviews as well. Learn about the OAuth 2.0, learn about JWT token, learn about cost. This is again not a Java backend development specific topic, but again you should know it. Also CSRF, and learn about user roles, right? I think this should be enough. Now another part which people often skips, but I won't really suggest you to do so, because anyway once you get inside a company, you have to learn to write unit tests. Without unit test you can't ship your code, right? So every company out there follow a test driven model, that is the test driven development, TDD as they call it. So basically in TDD model, what you generally do is, in a nutshell I will just tell you that you don't implement the function first, right, the core function. You just first write the unit test case against that function, and then obviously since your function is blank, the function is going to fail, right? Then you write code inside that function, inside the main function that you're trying to implement, and you write code in such a way that it passes the test case that you wrote in the test class for that particular function. So basically you first write the test and the test cases, and then you write the code. That is basically what you call a TDD model. Learn about JUnit and Mockito. So Mockito is again something that will be very useful while you will be writing a lot of unit test cases, because Mockito basically mocks a couple of functionalities. Like let's say you want to test a particular class, right, and that particular class is calling or making a lot of database calls, and you don't ideally want to make those database calls while running that unit test case or while just testing the function. So the basic flavor of an unit testing or unit test code is just unit testing that piece of code, right, that function. It is not bothered about the other functions that it is calling, right? If you're doing that, that is again an integration testing, that is a different flavor of testing. But for unit testing, that's where Mockito comes into picture, where it will help you in mocking the database call. So again, this is a very important concept, and trust me, all these things now, if you learn as a fresher, you would pick things up so fast, and you would be so ahead of your colleagues of your experience, and then you can come and thank me in the comment section. Here is an ideal time to get started with Spring Boot. Now I am sure many people would be tempted to start with Spring Boot a lot earlier if you can do that, but I personally started Spring Boot very late. Basically there is nothing much to learn in Spring Boot, it just makes your development process faster, right? And that's why I won't recommend you to get started with Spring Boot first, because I want you to get your hands dirty, right, so that you would be able to appreciate what Spring Boot does. So basically in Spring Boot you need to learn about the Spring Boot DevTools and the Spring Boot actuator. That's it. And maybe some advanced topics can be learning about Redis with Spring Boot, learning Kafka with Spring Boot. Kafka is a basically a messaging queue or a PubSub model. You can read about it, but again these are very advanced things, so learn only if you have interest. I think till here, if you learn till Spring Boot, I think it would be more than up and going to go and work for any tech company. I didn't cover Spring Cloud or microservices in this video because I think then the video is going to be very long and it would be too much for you to digest. Maybe I would make a separate video on that later, because there are a lot of other concepts that comes into microservices. There is a lot of high level design concepts that you're also expected to know. So that's why I thought of not including all these things in this video. But on a fresher level, if you learn these things that I just mentioned, to make a couple of projects using these technologies that you learned, right? Trust me, you are going to have a gala time in your project discussion rounds provided if you learn these things really well and you know what you're doing and you make some decent projects, and also you will have a very pleasant experience while onboarding in your company, right? Because as I said, the most of the companies are going to use Java eventually if you are getting in as a web developer, right? So there are two videos that you need to follow. The first one is the Java developer roadmap, which I'm going to leave in description, and also this video. Watch thoroughly and follow all the steps which I mentioned. Apart from that, I've made a video on DSA where I've talked about how can you get started with DSA from scratch, even if you don't know anything. What are the programming languages that you should follow for DSA? What are the topics and what is the order in which you should learn these topics? A very similar video like this. I've also made a video on how can you efficiently devise DSA. I made a video on how I prepared for LD. So a couple of videos on my channel related to interview preparation, related to getting started with the industry so that you have a smooth experience. I also do company reviews. You can go and check out my playlist where I talk about the salary, compensation, work-life balance, work culture, tech stacks, and a host of other things over there. So yeah, feel free to subscribe to my channel, because your one single click really motivates me a lot. And don't forget to press the bell icon so that every time I upload such a video you are notified. And also, one small request, I post a lot of travel content as well as tech content, which I have plans to on my Instagram. So if you can go and probably follow me on Instagram, it would mean the world to me, and it would motivate me to create a lot of content over there as well. So yeah, I think that's mostly it for the video. I hope this was beneficial for you, and we will see you in some other video. Till then, stay safe and goodbye. And yeah, one more thing, I'm going to come up with lot of advanced Java topics and Java tutorials on my channel very soon, along with DSA. So do stick with me, and I will be trying my best to give you content on my YouTube channel. I better do over here, and we will see you in the next one.